Modern Rolex has cultivated a reputation of being well-built, reliable watches, pretty safe when it comes to value retention, and not quite strong on fun. There is one watch though that defies that stereotype. Hi everyone and welcome to Shah Lusso, and yes, today we are talking about the Rolex Milgauss. Recently discontinued in 2023, I was asking myself, could this have been the last fun Rolex? Well, let's start out with a little bit of history about the watch in question. In the now discontinued generation of Milgauss, they actually had a version that didn't have the green crystal that ran from 2007 up until 2014. And that one had already set the standard for the Milgauss actually being a really fun watch within the Rolex collection. When you think of Rolex, it's always very focused on just the classics. It's the Porsche 911 school of design. Make a lot of tiny changes that don't really stand out, so you have an endearing design. Meanwhile, the Milgauss took that rule and ripped it apart. When it was released in 2007, they released it with a black dial that had orange markers and a bright orange lightning bolt shaped seconds hand. The lightning seconds hand was of course an homage to some of the original Milgausses, and that in itself was a nod to them being used as engineers' watches. Watches around people who work with a lot of magnetic fields, scientists, physicists. And that was also the reason why it was a Milgauss. It was created to be anti-magnetic because the idea was that people in this line of work would probably encounter a lot of magnetic fields, and they wanted a watch that wouldn't stop or become less accurate by virtue of being around all this magnetism. That's also the reason why even the present one still featured an iron cage on the back, which is used to disperse magnetism across the case instead of it happening around the movement. Now this was kind of a redundant feature in the latest Milgauss because it actually had the parachrom hairspring on the inside. This non-metallic hairspring is actually anti-magnetic, so they didn't have to worry. That's one of the key differences between the caliber 3131 from the Milgauss and the Air King versus the 3130 that was featured in the Oyster Perpetual. So Rolex already had a watch that was edgy, but still obviously paid some homage to a historical use. But they took it one step further in 2014. In 2014, they released the GV versions. And this, in my opinion at least, is showing Rolex when they really let their hair down. It's over-engineering at its best, totally unnecessary, but they did it because they could. That green sapphire wasn't just a film that they attached to it, they actually developed it so that through and through the entire sapphire has this green tint to it. Apparently it was something that took them years to develop, weeks to make each one, and it was so complicated, they didn't even bother to patent it because they figured who else would take the time to copy them. And this, in my view, is the best of the watch industry in general. It's when you see companies just doing things because they can, abandoning all sense of business viability, practicality. Just do it because you can, just do it because it looks cool. And this is what I love about this particular iteration of Milgauss. It already had the extra colors from the 2007 version, but the 2014 version brought that extra pop of color through the green, made it look almost radioactive when you look at it through certain lights, and it just embodies the idea of watches being something that you do because you want them, because you love them, because you enjoy it, because it's a good story. It's not just something that's done to pad numbers on a balance sheet. And the great thing is that even though it had all of these quirky anti-Rolex qualities to it, this was still a Rolex in all of the traditional senses as well. The Oyster case, 100 meters of water resistance. Very well sized at only 40 millimeters. True, the thickness could have been a bit less if it didn't have that cage in the back, but still at 13.3 millimeters, it's not exactly enormous. At 40 millimeters on the wrist, it fits perfectly fine. It even came with the Easy Link that made it a little bit easier to fit on your wrist. But packed with this many features and being a little bit of a wild child within the Rolex lineup, I was actually surprised that it lasted so long. I mean, for years you would hear people predicting they're gonna kill the Milgauss, they're gonna kill the Milgauss. Finally, they did it in 2023. And my guess is that it was that expensive sapphire crystal did end up costing it. But this now leaves a little bit of a gap within the Rolex collection because now we don't have this crazy bananas Milgauss popping out of the collection. But the more and more that I thought about this, I came to realize that this isn't actually the end of an era. The Milgauss was the start of an era. In 2007, when you compare it to the rest of the Rolex lineup at the time, there wasn't really a lot of color, there wasn't really a lot of crazy going on. You know, you didn't even have the Batman. That didn't come out until 2010 or 2011. The Hulk hadn't been released yet. The most color you had in the sports line was probably the Kermit with its aluminum green bezel. So what this did instead, in my view, is it signaled the beginning of an era that I think is currently hitting its peak. In 2023, we saw Rolex come out with the titanium Yachtmaster, with the 1908. They came out with the puzzle dials. They went mad. And this, I think, is Rolex now realizing that they've passed the point where they need to pad their collection with so much vanilla that everyone will always buy, that now they can afford to have some fun. And I think the Milgauss showed them that it was possible. My guess is that while yes, it was never the huge hype piece that something like a Platinum Daytona is, it is still something that shows that you can still sell a Rolex, have it embody everything in Rolex, but still also be a lot of fun and be something different, be something that reflects a personality, not just a uniform. But that's my thoughts. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think of the Milgauss? Do you think they'll bring it back? Do you think it was a good idea that they got rid of it? And if they were to bring it back, would you want them to bring it back in a more conservative design? Or would you want them to take it one notch further on the crazy? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Of course, if you like this video, then make sure you like it and share it. If you want to see more pictures and infographics of watches, then make sure you follow me on Instagram at Lusso. If you want to see more videos about watches, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell as well. And if you want to see more about Rolex, then check out my Rolex playlist. In any case, thanks for joining me on this quick overview of one of Rolex's most fun watches, and we'll catch you in the next video.